Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Face the Truth. Hope everyone's doing well out there. I've been trying to do everything I can to keep sane right now. Having a good time with my kids and trying to do as much drawing and painting as possible, exercising, and trying not to drink so much wine, you know what I'm saying? But overall, things are good. Chicago seems to be doing okay. I hope you guys are all well. I'm really excited about my guest this week. I've known Travis's work for many years. We'll get into all that, I'm sure. Just a super talented artist, and I'm really excited to talk to him about because he's the epitome of what I think of as the traditional artist, where he's just amazing with almost every medium you can think of, and he's got a really unique voice, unique style, and just beautiful rendering and ideas and the whole nine yards. So. Also, I hear he's kind of a cool guy. I don't know. We'll have to see about that. But anyways, without further ado, everyone, please welcome Mr. Travis Louie.
Hello, everybody.
How's it going, man? How you been?
All right. The isolation economy is still going, so there you go.
Yeah.
Keep working.
Yep. Yeah. It's weird. I mean, I do this. I talk with artists every week on this podcast, and it's been a similar kind of a feeling where it's like for us, it's like, hey, we're always kind of quarantined a little bit.
Yeah.
So. Our families are used to us always being here. So, it's a little bit, it's not as weird for me, except for when I go outside. That's when it's weird,
Oh yeah.
But that's where it's strange. But how you been doing, your family and everything throughout all this stuff?
Well, it's the only thing that's strange is having them around all the time. Because usually, my kid's off at school and my wife's at her job usually. And now she's not. She's at home, and the kid is home. Her classes were moved home, so there's that quiet time in the middle of the day is gone. So I've been working a night schedule mostly.
Yeah,
just
I seem to remember. I mean, I could be wrong, but I first was made aware of you through Fred Harper, a long time ago. He's a mutual friend of both of ours, and if I remember correctly, I thought you guys. From what I remember him telling me is you guys would just be up all night long working on deadlines and just talking while you're working on stuff.
Yeah.
The good old days.
Those are the good old days. He was doing stuff for Sports Illustrated, and I was still doing illustration work more than fine artwork at that point. So of course the deadlines are whatever the art director says, it's like, there's always changes. And then there's the deadline. So then you have to deliver, as you know. You got.
Oh yeah. So. Now I remember I've heard of you because of Fred. Fred's been a buddy of mine for a long time, and every time I go to New York, I stay with him. And I never knew like what you looked like, so I didn't know if I met you who you were, but I knew your work. And the first time I met you, I don't know if you remember this, was at the San Diego Comic-Con, and I think it was 2008. And I was standing right next to you, had no idea you were Travis Louie, but I saw the books, and I was just like, man, this is crazy. This is awesome. Looking through the book and everything, and then you were like, hi, I'm Travis, and I was like, oh, you're Travis. And I was like, and I felt like so silly because I was just like saying how, I mean, this is not that silly. I was just saying, this is so amazing. Can you believe how awesome this art is? And you're just standing there like, I'm Travis. But you were so nice, and it was so cool. Yeah, man, I have this too. I still have this book, and I remember you sent me a copy years ago. But I love
that's the original. That's the first printing.
This what's really cool. What blew me away about this book, I was looking at it again the other day, was I don't know if I ever told you this, but I don't know if even this shows up on the screen. Oh, yeah, it shows up. So you wrote this nice little note to me and this drawing. And the funny thing is your handwriting is so freaking amazing and the drawing is so nice that I didn't notice it as a note to me for a little while.
Oh wow, that's weird.
I just thought it was like, I didn't read the writing at first. I looked at the drawing and it was like a little bit after I had it, and I looked back and I'm like, wait a minute, that says to Jason? Wait a minute, what? It just tricked me because your handwriting was so perfect. It's so nice. And
I had especially printed because I wanted to cover all the Jasons all over the world.
No, that's just so funny though. I mean, I wasn't like I had it for years and noticed it, but it was like, you know, it was probably about a week or two. I looked through it again. I'm like, what? That's so crazy. You have really nice handwriting.
Thanks.
My handwriting looks. I write like a doctor, but I don't have the money, the doctor money, as they say.
They had a more rigorous.
They have a little bit more responsibility than me as
rigorous, well. Handwriting in public school when I was in public school. So, especially in New York, anyway. Not so much now. Now everybody is using keyboards, so they don't. I'm not so sure they teach cursive in public school anymore.
Isn't that weird? That's so strange. I have a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old, and I think my 16-year-old learned cursive, but my 13-year-old, I think they were showing them things where they had to write in cursive, and she had no idea. I'm like, what? They're just forgetting it. They're just like, you're not doing that anymore. It's like, no, we're learning how to type and that sort of a thing. But I got to keep the only thing I do in cursive now, if I'm being honest, is my signature. That's pretty much it right now.
Yeah, no, you got. Yeah, I think it's important. Just as a piece of history.
Oh yeah.
And a connection to the past, because that's part of what it maintains our culture is our connection to the past. So it's important to I think to learn of writing, because otherwise you can't watch certain 1930s movies where it part of the scene will be like somebody wrote a letter, but it's like in cursive. So when it hits the screen, you're like, man, I don't even know what that says, you know, because you just didn't learn it, you know.
It is interesting. That's true though. I think it's important as well, you know. But it's dude, it's weird. Everything's weird right now, like in general. It's weird that kids having to go, you know, doing school from home. My 16-year-old, I get her assignments every day emailed to me. And I'm like, hey, I got this. And she's like, I know, I got it too. I'm like, okay, just letting you know, this is due. I know, you know, it's cool though. Like, I don't know. How old's your kid?
She's 20.
20. Okay, so that's way different.
She's in college. So
college, yeah. That's way different. But I'm blown away just by, like, so my daughter's been going to this high school now for 2 years, and they, you know, of course they're doing the whole thing with computers now. Every kid gets a computer, right? And they don't have to carry all these books to school anymore. It's like, man, this is crazy. So what's kind of interesting throughout this whole situation is she's still doing schoolwork every day, which is nice. Like, you know, I hear a lot of parents are having to actually homeschool and so on, but I haven't actually had to do too much of that, which has been nice. Since I'm not the best at that.
Yeah, me too. It would be, if I had a homeschool, that would be horrible. It'd be a disaster. You know, my kid would be just this paranoid.
I know, man. Like, my daughters, basically, they know that whenever they have math, just don't even bother asking dad about it. Just don't even bother. I mean, as soon as they started introducing the alphabet into math, I was like, okay, so confused right now. What is happening? But yeah, luckily my wife, she knows what's up. So, but that's why she pays the bills. So, what kind of things you've been doing throughout all this to keep yourself busy? I mean, you got deadlines and stuff like that.
Still, I mean, right away I had to do a job for the New York Times. Like right away, I had to do like a cover, you know. So
cool.
Yeah, there's always something, right? And then the commissions came in, but then I have to work on my show. I'll be honest, for like a minute, there was a minute of panic because part of my income disappeared because 2 of the art fairs that I normally exhibit in took a dive.
Yeah.
That's a significant amount of income lost. So I thought, wait, where's it all gonna? And then all of a sudden, the New York Times job came in, and then I started selling a lot of prints. People started buying prints for some reason. I'm like, all right, just keep buying them. Keep the lights on, and here we are. So luckily
that's
there's
good.
that.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I've had. I was like almost the opposite. I was like super slammed for months, which was good because I was able to save up a little bit. But since this has all gone on, I've only gotten like a couple jobs, and so I'm right now kind of like, okay, waiting for that phone to ring. But it kind of works that way in illustration anyways. So I'm trying to not panic too much right now. I have some private commissions I'm working on, but what's going on right now is already nerve-wracking enough. But I think being a freelance artist is already always sort of, you're always kind of got that panic a little bit in your mind, like, okay, hey, hope someone calls me soon. So I think I'm kind of used to that feeling, but this adds a little bit more worry to the mix, like, okay.
Well, that's true.
Maybe publications are not, we don't care about illustration right now, or you know what I mean? Like, there's
then it's up to you to make your own. And I think you've got a remarkable bit of chops there yourself, young man. I mean, there's things you know how to do that a lot of people don't know how to do, and so that's helpful. You could, you obviously you could teach too if you need to.
No, I actually do teach.
Yeah.
But I teach for schools, and so that's already a thing that I do, which is cool. I'm grateful for that. That's really nice. It's definitely helpful.
Do you find that the technology keeps changing, and that's helped you, right, or not helped you?
I mean, in what way helped me? Like, just with, I mean, to be honest, I'm not a super tech savvy person.
No, I mean, I could get work anywhere now. It used to be.
As far as that goes,
back in the '90s, I mean, it was. I mean, if I had to show somebody a color study, dude, I had to get on a train, go into Manhattan because you couldn't fax a color study, and then I had to wait, right? And then because they set an appointment, but he's usually talking to somebody else by the time I get there, and then I get there, and then it's like, well, you here? You want a drink? And I'm like, oh, all right, and then all of a sudden it's like, 2 hours later, it's like, I love it. And then, and then we're not shaking hands, we're hugging, and I'm like, oh, all right. Either the guy's really lonely, or if he's had too many, or who knows. But that's what it used to be like. You'd go in, and it was like that for a while, and then of course computers showed up, and then suddenly I didn't have to, physically go to the location to deliver a color study. I can email that to somebody. Yeah. That's an amazing thing, I think.
See, I think I jumped into the illustration game just when that changed, because when I got started, I was doing everything in acrylics at the time, some watercolor, and then I would, scan them, color correct them, all that kind of stuff, and then email it. So it was only email right away. Like, I never had to do.
How cool is that?
Yeah, and then since then, the digital thing started happening, and I kind of rejected it at first. I didn't like the digital painting. I didn't think it was real, and I didn't think it I didn't think I could do my art and it still had quality to it.
Changes. Oh my god.
But I jumped into it, and I taught myself how to do it. So I've never really known that. It's funny. I talked with Chris Payne about this as well, and he was telling me some crazy stories about just having to drive 6 hours to get his painting FedExed quicker to New York or wherever it was, and
that's right.
And then the next day it's printed everywhere, and you're like, what? So that's interesting. I'm in a way, I'm still blown away by a lot of the artists out there that are working traditionally for deadlines, just because the digital technology has. The one good thing this is a good thing and a bad thing. One good thing is there's like the iPad Pro, for example, and Procreate has some amazing brushes that just I'm really starting to love working with that, where I'm starting to feel like, oh man, this does feel like an extension of my hand, and I feel like it's very natural. And
You
And
like it better than Photoshop? I thought Photoshop was pretty good at.
well, I do all my professional like final illustration work on a Cintiq in Photoshop.
That's what I figured. Yeah.
Yeah, but it took me years to develop a technique and brushes and everything where I feel like, okay, this is my voice. I feel like I'm creating paintings, and but the technology has been evolving so much that now it's like anyone can just go buy an iPad Pro with Procreate and whatever, and there's all these brushes, and they're like, oh wow, look at, all of a sudden they do really good brush work, and it's like, wait a minute, you don't even know how to paint. Like how? So in one way, it's been frustrating because it's like it's almost making things too easy. Like I'm noticing certain things, like, wait a minute, I know that guy can't paint very well. How is he doing that? You know, and so that's a little bit weird. I've noticed it too with like inking. You'll see a lot of people inking on iPads, and they have like this setting where it, like, you'll do like a line and it corrects it for you, and it makes it like this perfect thin thick line, and you're like, wait a minute, you son of a bitch. Like, you can't ink to save your life, but all of a sudden now you're fucking Jack Davis. Like like, so there's that aspect of it that is annoying to me, but at the same time, like, I learned how to adapt with the illustration world. Like, I remember when I was first sending artwork to compete in Society of Illustrators, the work I was getting in was acrylics and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And then when I started doing digital, and the reason I started doing digital was because the deadlines were just so ridiculous, and then you have to change things, and I was like, this is gonna like relieve a lot of stress, and so I started getting my work accepted as digital pieces. And the Society of Illustrators, I don't think they realized it because they look traditional. And then when I would have the print hanging at the show, underneath it would say digital painting. And I remember the first time I went, I was so proud. I had like 2 or 3 pieces in, and I heard these 2 artists that I really looked up to going, well, like, he's like, this one's pretty cool, right? Yeah, but it's digital. And I remember just thinking, oh man, like, they don't respect it, right? But then maybe 2 years later, it's like 80 to 90% all digital submissions. So like, it changed fast. Like, it really changed fast. And to me, it makes sense.
I remember when Todd Lockwood first started doing it, and he wasn't even using Photoshop. He was using Painter. Remember that program, Painter?
Oh yeah.
He's using that, and I asked him, I was like, man, that seems crazy. How do you? It's not so intuitive. Whereas Photoshop, to me, seems more intuitive as far as, you know, you could kind of hit the ground running. Yeah, and everybody's methodology is even different with it. Like, I do things with Photoshop that are different, you know. Which, by the way, that's I'll do most of the job by hand, mm-hmm. you know, with paints. But when there's changes, that's where I thank God Photoshop exists, because then I can mimic anything that I do. But the reason why I still work traditionally is because I there's a resale value in the original that I have. And that's why I do that. So it's like you kind of hit it twice. You get paid from the job, and then I could sell it somewhere.
Yeah, that makes sense. But see, the difference, I mean, for me, I don't really care as much about that aspect of it, because a lot of the illustration work I do are just like you know, I'll do, like, every once in a while there'll be like a cool portrait I get to do for Rolling Stone or something of a musician, and that would be cool if I had enough time to do an original painting, and then I could sell that. But usually they give me 1 to 2 days to do it. So yeah. And to be honest, they're not paying that well, in my opinion, for me to do an oil painting. So for me, digital just makes way more sense. Oh yeah. And then besides that, a lot of the illustration stuff I do is like you know, political people or random portraits for an article of someone I don't even know who the hell it is. Like, no one's gonna want to buy that painting. You know what I mean? Yeah. So to me, it's not that big of a deal. So I save all my traditional oil and that kind of stuff for private commissions or just for my own work. Also, just, you know, for practice. I like to, like, right now I'm doing some oils that are just for me to keep up the game, you know, and plus it's just so much fun, you know.
It's funny you mentioned earlier, because you used to be able to tell who didn't know how to paint even when they worked digitally. Like you could kind of tell those little things that go, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But now because the technology's improved, and I guess maybe the way people see things is different now that it's caught up. So sometimes you don't really know if that person, without knowing them actually working, you really can't tell if they actually know how to use the tools. The traditional tools. We had a visitor at SVA, and he did a slideshow, and I looked at his work, and something about the way everything balanced made me think, I don't think this guy knows how to paint. And I pulled him aside privately, and I asked, I said, you don't paint, do you? And he goes, and then his head went down. He goes, no. And I said, no, it's not a slight. I'm just noticing, because I'm still the teacher, so I have to tell him, and he's a little younger than me, so I said, you have to think about weight, and that's really and certain colors do certain things in paint that would not be possible, if you were trying to paint that way. Whereas digitally, you could make any color go over any color.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And so there's little things like that I would notice. But that's funny because you're when you're switching from traditional to digital, like that you can't help but fall back on your what you were doing traditionally. So sometimes you don't take the risk, I guess, with certain colors. I'd be curious what a guy like Jim Gurney would do digitally. I'd be curious how he would work digitally.
Yeah, I wonder if he has played with it digitally. I don't know. I'm sure he has.
I'm sure he has. He must have.
Yeah.
I could ask him, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, my approach is thinking traditionally as much as possible, and I think that's what's going to separate my digital work, anyways, is because for example, right now I'm doing I'm actually working on both of these two oil paintings right now that I have behind me, but just yesterday I was doing the small little one back here, just blocking in, and
Bobby Lee.
Yeah, Bobby Lee. And there's some really cool little subtle things I did with the brush. I just noticed how this certain layer, this value over the other layer, just how it mixed in this one spot was so cool looking that I just want to leave that spot. It was just I don't want to render that one spot anymore. It's just perfect the way it is. It's beautiful. I love that. And I was remember that for next time I do a digital painting, to think about the brushwork in that way. Now, by not being a painter, you're not going to know these things. You're not going to get these things. You're not going to understand the impact of an underpainting, for example. A lot of times when I do digital paintings, I will purposely put the complementary color, do a wash underneath, and then start pulling out my color from that. And you see some of that violet or whatever it is popping through, in the painting. You're not going to know these things. You're not going to do these things unless you actually experience it, and you start to, James Gurney is a great example of someone that I recommend anybody to continue to just follow, just because the guy shares so much technique, so much, different palette techniques and so on. But in some ways, it almost feels like a lost art. I remember I went to art school for only a couple years, and I was already working professionally, and I went just to try to see if it could help me become a faster illustrator, because I was getting so stressed with my deadlines. It didn't really. It just made me realize that I was ready to just keep going.
Oh yeah.
But the one thing is I remember towards the last semester that I was there, that's when I started playing with digital. And I remember all the professors not shaming me, but kind of yeah, no, because I was trying to do an assignment digitally, and they wanted it to be all traditional. So I did my traditional, but then I also did an extra assignment digitally just because I wanted to but they wouldn't accept it. They're like, no, this is whatever. We have no proof of how you did it or whatever. I'm like, oh, I painted it, but whatever. So it was kind of taboo. It was and the funny thing is, maybe not even 5 years later, I was asked to come to the school and do a portfolio review for the senior class. And I did that. And like every single student's portfolio was digital art, and I was so confused. I'm like, what is going on? And I talked to the dean, and he's like, oh yeah, we've got a really great digital program now. It teaches Photoshop, and we have a few Cintiqs. And I'm like, really? That's interesting.
You can't.
How fast that changed.
Yeah, well, you can't hold back the wave of technology.
Oh no,
I
just think it was funny that it took a little bit to catch on. But I mean, it's good. It's good that they do that. I hope now. I mean, I haven't been there for years, but I hope they're still keeping up with the traditional techniques.
Well, it's funny. We have both at my school, and I don't really care what they use as long as they can communicate the job, the assignment. That's what matters.
So is it illustration that you're teaching?
Yeah, I teach a pictorial assignment illustration class, and I also teach drawing. Drawing, again, that's a whole other thing. That's there's two different things that I'm teaching in drawing. So part of it does require that you draw with traditional medium because I'm teaching them touch. And oddly enough, I use my handwriting as an example of controlling a line by pressure.
That's good.
But switching to online teaching, everybody's using their iPad Pros to do the drawings right now.
Yeah.
And the results they're pretty good, but then I keep talking to them about things like, how much DPI the image should be,
Yeah.
Because I have to explain to them, look, it can't be less than 300, or it's not. No one can use that.
Yep.
I mean, so it's like, you know how that goes.
Yeah. No, I've been teaching for schools since I think 2006 or something like that, and it's still to this day it surprises me how many students will hand in an assignment and they did it at 72 DPI. It's
what?
Like, what are you thinking?
You can't use that.
It looks like, and then it's hard for me to critique. Like I'm something's not right with that. I go and I zoom in, it's just boxes.
I'm like, okay, yeah, like, oh, this is not good. Now, everything has to be 300. All the drawings have to be at least 11 by 14 at 300 DPI. Because from that, they could, you can make it bigger, you can make it small. You could, it's got to be good enough that someone could make a print out of it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the key, because it's pixelation is a hassle. It's just a hassle.
Yeah.
You couldn't hand that into the Times. It's like,
no. Yeah, that's another thing.
72. Can you imagine? That's not gonna happen.
Do you ever find have problems with students that are just like just not handing things in on time, and you're like, dude, why are you studying illustration if you can't hand something in on time? That's interesting. I've dealt with that a lot with students. Where it's like, hey, I don't know how many more times we're gonna have to say the same thing over and over to you.
Well, they'll learn real fast when they get into the real world, and the deadlines are real.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So it's a print deadline or something, and you gotta, it's like they call Fred Harper, they send him that email at midnight on Sunday night, and he goes, Sports Illustrated, like, oh, we need a sketch, tomorrow, and he's like, all right, and then he sketches, and then we need to finish on Tuesday, and they're like, what? And he's like, okay, and he would do that every week because it was a weekly magazine. Remember him doing this every week for a whole year, and it was because they had to wait till the whole week's worth of news and sporting events went through because they want to be timely.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than a weekly magazine that's like 2 weeks late with the story, So, it's not how, it's tough. I get that. Everyone else, especially now with the information age, everything is so fast. News travels so fast. So deadlines are important.
It's very important. Yeah, I tried to share. Like I was asked like a week ago, or so, I think it was a week ago, to do like a demo or like a thing for the International Society of Caricature Artists. So I did like a live stream thing for them, and I had saved some step-by-steps I had done for a recent magazine cover. So I like basically just showed them the behind the scenes of from the text I got from the art director to looking up reference to doing the sketch to get the sketch approved. All that had to be done within a couple hours, and then I only have like a day and a half to do the whole painting. So I try to like break it down, and show them. But it's one of those things where I think, as far as illustrators go, I think that the ones that have done it for a while now, it's just, I don't even think about it really anymore. Like it's just like I'm not. I guess what I should say is I'm not shocked. Like I'm never like, oh, you need that yesterday. And I'm not gonna probably get paid for 3 months. Okay. I see how it goes.
It's funny because usually it's I'm bracing for it, and they always ask, they're like, can you? Because they know I work traditionally. They go, can you do that? And can you get that to us in 3 days? And I go, yeah. And they go, really? I was like, yeah. Because I did that. That's what I used to do. So not a big deal. As long as we could, like, you look at this sketch and the final drawing, and there isn't anything else. You're looking at this thing. It's not going to change at all. This is what you're getting. And they go, this is what I want. Then boom, I'll do it. No problem.
And do you have different techniques for quick deadlines like that? Like, do you, I guess dumbing down is not the right word, but like simplify style a little bit, just, for those kind of deadlines so that it's a little bit, practical for your timing and so on?
Well, I use more of a transparent method when I do it. So what I allow for is I have an opaque projector, and I print my sketch out. So if something goes wrong, I have boards ready just in case something happens. I can quickly throw the thing back in the projector and trace it again. Because you can trace things really quickly.
Yeah.
Think of Drew Struzan tracing on one of those big illustration boards. It's like it's very fast.
Yeah.
You don't lose too much because the sketch has already been done already.
Yeah.
And you can make it any size. The trick was figuring out what's the optimum size for the speed of your methodology, right? So the smaller you work, the less real estate you have to cover, right? So theoretically you could do it faster, but then what you lose there is detail because you're working smaller.
Yeah.
So you have to find that happy medium, like what's the ideal size, right? So for me, that would be 11 by 14. It's not too big, it's not too small. I can still do detail, but I don't have to. If you work too big, then you get grounded in, you got to paint everything. You could suggest, you still have room to suggest things, right?
Yeah.
That's key.
And are you still mostly working with acrylics for those kind of deadlines?
Yes, acrylics. But lately for those, it's more graphite underneath than acrylic, and then acrylic on top.
Oh, okay.
Because I figured out a way to make the graphite seem darker.
Oh,
and
okay.
that is by working on a gessoed surface.
Oh, yeah.
So when any pencil on a gessoed surface comes out, darker. You can make an HB lead look like a 6B on a gessoed.
And are you just gessoing like illustration board?
Yes, and also museum board.
Oh, okay.
Which is really thick. It's about it's not quite a half an inch thick museum board, which is kind of crazy. But there's a lot of room for error. Like if something goes wrong, I could take an electric eraser or a power sander and take something out and go back in.
Yeah, I saw a post recently with all your erasers. It was quite impressive. It looked like almost like Rambo selecting which machine gun he was going to use next. It's pretty cool. So do you do a lot of like rendering like your darks, and then you come in with the erasers and just kind of start pulling information out? Like
yes, I do that a lot, and I also it helps with texture because I find that if you could delineate certain objects by how much texture they have, right?
Mm-hmm.
So certain things that are smoother are off in the distance. Things that are closer have more texture, right? And also have more contrast. It gives the illusion of depth.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
So that's
awesome.
what that's for. And then I have different erasers that have different shapes, so they make different marks.
Yeah.
That's where it's almost kind of abstract. Where the eraser in my hand is just kind of it's like a brush. I'm just kind of moving it around, very haphazard, because reality is full of many things that are irregular patterns, right? Well, you know this. I mean, when you're doing, let's say you're doing you're painting a portrait of William S. Burroughs, let's say, and now his skin texture is going to be different than, say, Bobby Lee, who's a younger man, right? So, right, you're adjusting the marks that the color goes down in, right? and maybe also adjusting the I guess the value of it, right? How like there might be more values in something where there's more texture, more things are going on, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I have like, I mean, I'll focus on my like a strong drawing, make sure likeness and structure and everything is all there, and then from that point on, as long as I understand that I'm working in that environment of that structure that I created,
yeah,
I'm not really thinking very much about features anymore, or I'm mostly just thinking about shapes and
blocking in the shapes, yeah.
Color, light, and it's just about how these shapes relate to one another and the values and the temperature, and is this cooler, is it warmer, you know, and it's like, I think of when I'm painting, I'm thinking more, it's almost like sculpting. Like I'm trying to just bring out this form. It's really, I think really the basic simple way is to say it is, it's just trying to capture the light a little, as much as possible. You know, like how's the light reacting on this object? And as long as you do that, it's gonna boom. But I mean, there's so many different approaches. Like, you know, like even the Bobby Lee that I just started. I could just do one more session with like a medium-sized brush, and it'll be done. It'll be like a nice painted, very painterly, quick painting that will look just like him and will look nice. But if I want to take it further, that's when I slow down a little bit and get out the smaller brushes and start just getting in there and like, it's like almost like zooming in now.
Oh yeah.
So there's so many different approaches. Like with your work, one of the things that I've seen a couple originals a few years, maybe 5 years or so ago. You had a show in New York. We had dinner together with my wife and Fred and you.
Yep.
And what blew me away about it, because like there's not much mystery. I've said this before with different people about this, but I've done so many paintings, and I look at, that's all, art is just my life. So I'm not like blown away or shocked, or, you know, like I said, there's not much mystery about a lot of paintings I see. I'll see paintings and go, God damn, that's beautiful. That's amazing. Awesome. But I know how he did it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But some of your paintings are some of the paintings where I'm like, I want to be a fly in the wall and see how this happens, because I don't get some of it. Like there's such a smooth, like it's an interesting approach that you have with acrylics that I'm not used to.
Dry brush?
I don't know. Like I've just never, like I've been more like a direct painter, you know, building up values and everything. But you've got such a smooth, like soft kind of. It just I've never seen anyone paint that way with acrylics.
You need to use bigger brushes to smooth out an area that big. Mm-hmm. So you need a brush that's as wide as the whole board. So you need one of these.
Oh, okay.
So this is a 10-inch, so I could do 8x10 paintings with this.
Okay.
I have a cheat. I have another one of these that's two of these board attached together with a board.
Okay.
I kind of messed around I have a 20-inch one.
Okay.
So I'll drop in something with just a smaller brush, a tone, and very quickly just blend it down, right? So it's drying smeared, and that's it.
Wow.
That's all it is, and yet it looks weird, right? And then you figure underneath is graphite, and what does graphite do when you do that? It smooths out, and that's why the stuff looks like that. That's all it is.
Wow, that's interesting.
I mean, because I painted live. I painted live at an event called Baby Tattooville, and they watched me do it, and they saw me do it, and they still seem confused by it. And I was like, no, it's just you're watching me do it. It's just the paint. Acrylics, 30 seconds on average, but if it's a dry brush, it's less than 30 seconds. You want to control that, and you have to control the marks in between the marks. Think of what it looks like if you blow up a piece of paper that has medium texture and you're working in graphite, if you look closely, really closely, you'll see as the gradation changes over the paper, the distance between the marks of graphite on the paper dissipates. Right? You can do that with paint too. That's all it is.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Yeah, that's weird. I mean, I'd love to watch that. That's interesting. That's I don't know. I mean, what? So when you're doing the brush over aren't you getting it just full of crap? So the next time you go over, you're going to get more stuff all over, or just because
it dries in less than 30 seconds.
It just dries that quick, and you can just
that quick, and I can just keep going.
That's
awesome. The tough part is going back. If you make a mistake,
yeah, then you're screwed.
And then that's when the electric eraser comes out and the power sander, and then you have to even it out, and then you have to have different grits of sandpaper.
Is this a technique that you kind of just developed on your own?
Pretty much.
Just kind of experimenting and that sort of a thing.
Yeah.
Because that's the one thing about illustration. A lot of people have questions about this. Is like how to create your own voice and your own aesthetic. And you definitely have your own look. I mean, anybody can just look at one of your pieces and go, "Oh, Travis Louie did that." It's a very difficult thing, I think, to have that especially when especially now if you go on Instagram, and there's just so many painters. It's amazing to see. There was a time where I thought maybe traditional art was dying and it was on its way out, just because I wasn't seeing much of it. But you jump on Instagram, man, there is just so many amazing artists out there now. Oil painting, watercolor, just beautiful stuff. But it's so difficult, I think, to have that voice,
The trick is, it's funny. You can kind of tell who more or less taught themselves how to paint, and then there's schools of people that, let's say they go to an atelier, and they call these things, and you learn how to paint like the teacher, and there's definite methodology to how to do it, which is wonderful, but here's the thing: as an artist, you have to go beyond that, and methodology is the start, and then afterward you have to have a voice that is your ideas. What are you painting, and what you're painting mean? What does it mean to you, and what is the connection that it has with your life experience? If someone were to ask you about your work, you should have the 3 sentences to describe what your work is about, or something to that effect. Maybe even just a paragraph, something you can quickly say that sort of connects the dots. And you might not have it, and that's okay. That's okay too, because maybe right now you're just you just go with the flow and you're doing what seems natural in your visual language, right? But my problem with a lot of the people that go to these ateliers is that they become clones. And I'm sure you've heard this.
Oh, yeah,
right?
Yeah.
They've sort of become clones of their teacher. So you see the same sort of model position. There's another model holding a stick, standing there, or there's a certain kind of drapery or this or that.
Same palettes.
Yeah, same palette. Which, again, not a problem, but can you apply that to something else, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing. I would love it if those people that are learning how to paint like that do something else with it, because I think we already have enough people that can do a portrait and paint like that and do it very well. There are a lot of really good portrait painters out there, hundreds and hundreds of these guys.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe thousands. Right. Everyone, even them, even the technique is different, because maybe one school does it one way, that's maybe more Italian. Maybe another person does it another way that's more French, right? Depending on what century their teacher's master came from, what the lineage is, and even that is like a game of telephone, isn't it? Right. So things change over time, materials change, and things get lost. So maybe what Ang was teaching his students, and then his students teaching somebody else, things change, right? Like there's a direct connection between David and Ang, and then slowly it eventually catches up to Bouguereau, right? But yet Bouguereau didn't paint like those guys.
No,
painted completely differently than. I mean, it's the same materials, but what he painted, why he painted, was different, right?
Yeah.
So it's a different time, it's a different socioeconomic climate, right? So things change. That's all I'm saying. Is things change.
Oh
so,
yeah. But I mean,
Yeah.
it is interesting. Like I don't think, like even like you developing your technique and look. I mean, I don't know if you were out there being like, hey, I'm trying to find I'm trying to like create a style. I think that kind of just ends up happening, you know, as you continue to just push yourself, right?
Oh yeah.
Because it's like I've heard people just, you know, ask, you know, how do I just come up with my own style? And it's like, well, you can't just, I mean, it's kind of hard to explain, I think, in some ways. But, you know, for me, I just been drawing and painting as much as I can. And the more you do it, the more you start to feel, it's like writing, you know, I've noticed, like I started doing stand up and I love to write. And I noticed just, you know, every single time I go to start writing something, now I'm starting to have like this, there's almost like a small universe I've created for myself. If that makes sense. Like when I start writing, I'm like, oh, these are the rules in my universe. This is how I'm starting to have a voice and how I'm writing things. And this is a great setup for this. And then I'll make like a couple dots. And that means to go back to this other part where I'm writing, you know, like there's like, it's like almost creating a language, but you don't just get that right away. You develop that.
Yes, you develop it. And it obviously is affected, right, by the temperature of the room, you know, like, and you brought up stand-up comics. Yes. Stand-up comedy, writing. If you go back and you look at the stand-up comics from, say, the 1960s, still funny stuff, really funny stuff, but they took a little more time for their setup. Yeah. I don't know if they would work today because they might not be fast enough now. Yeah. I find that comics today, they seem quicker or something. I don't know what it is. Maybe, you know, I grew up watching these shows. I remember when I first got HBO back in 1977, they used to have a program called On Location. And they had a comic there. His name was David Brenner. David Brenner? Yeah. First time I'd ever seen him. And I was like, man, who is this guy? This guy is hilarious. But then I noticed every comic that came on after it they brought on, it was like the style was so different because it was almost like things were just starting to change. Because the next guy they had on was Robin Williams. Now, Robin Williams in 1977 was like, he was out of control. You cannot. He was like, I guess he always kind of was, but he was younger back then, so he was climbing the stage. He was everywhere. He was all over that place. Yeah, you know. But again, things change, right? But the stuff that his routine, just like Steve Martin's routines back then, his show, and Steve Martin was selling out like Nassau Coliseum. He was selling out like stadiums, like not stadiums, but like big venues, you know, venues that had more than 10,000 people in them, right? So there he is.
Oh, yeah, it's a completely different approach. Yeah, it's completely.
I don't know if you could do that now.
But you know what I think part of it too is that like when you like, I don't know how it was years and years and years ago, like in the 70s with comedy, but like now, like when you like get into comedy, you only have 4 minutes. They only give you 4 minutes.
That's it, right?
So you could either do one long story that has a nice, you know, delivery at the end, or you've got 4 minutes where you could have 4 smaller setups with good punches, or you could even break it down to where your first 2 minutes, you've got 4 jokes in that first 2 minutes, and then the next 2 minutes you have 2 jokes. You know what I mean? So you can like,
right.
But you only have 4 minutes to leave an impact. So you've got to kind of be like bam, bam, bam. And what I've discovered is I need to get a laugh within at least 5 to 10 seconds. That's the goal. You want right away. You want people to be like, oh shit, like okay,
yeah.
And then you want to end with like something that's big. So you only, but you know, it's not until you do enough of those where someone's like, hey man, can you do 10 minutes or can you do 7 minutes? You know, you want to open for a show that's not in front of open micers, you know, like that's in front of real people. Then I think when you start doing that, you still have that quick ideas and you want to try to like everything, but then maybe you can slow down and you can kind of elaborate on some of those a little bit. But I think painting is the same way for certain, like for illustration deadlines. Like I used to look at illustration work more in a judgmental way when I was first getting started in this, where I would look at like an illustration that someone did for, whatever magazine it is and be like, I could do better than that, like, yeah, I can do, and it would kind of, in a way, give me like some kind of confidence where I felt like, man, I can do this. I can do illustration, because this guy's in magazines constantly, and I know I can draw and paint better than that guy. And then you get into it, and you're like, oh, he only had 2 days to do that. Yeah. And I was being a dick. And I was being ignorant and annoying, And so I think, there's a certain thing with illustration where we kind of have to do that song and dance as well, where it's like, hey, listen, I only have like 4 minutes. So what can I do in 4 minutes to get my point of view across and to do a great job, and to also and allow for me to be able to continue to do this work? You know what I mean? That they're like happy with the work, and that, it's to a certain standard. Because that's the thing for me in illustration, is like, even though if I only have a couple days, I still wanted to have that Seiler standard, that quality. Like, hey, this is going to be a solid likeness. It's going to be painted in like the highest quality that I can do, and it's going to be a nice finish, But that's the challenge.
There's a level of consistency that is expected of you, and if you don't deliver, not just for yourself but for the client, that's problematic, right? So of course, you probably have just like you described, you have a set of rules in your universe that you've created, and if you follow those rules, follow the steps, even if you're having a bad day, and maybe it's not as good as this other thing you would have done another time, but because you follow those rules, it's consistent enough to do the job, to communicate the job. And sometimes I see painters that when they go into the fine art world, it gets a little murky, because now you have they think you have more time. You kind of don't, actually. It's fun that there's this illusion that because that's more or less what I'm doing now. It's mostly fine art at this point, selling in galleries, and I have sometimes my deadlines are just as bad as illustration job deadlines.
Yeah.
Right. So I have to come up with all these paintings in a really short amount of time, and if I didn't have drawings done, I'd be in trouble. But because my methodology relies so much on the drawing underneath, it's okay. I could figure it out. I could paint my way out of it. Right. Whatever this situation I put myself in.
Yeah.
Because life happens, right? But the show has to go on. The deadline is always there. You can't. You made a promise. You got to deliver on the promise, and there it is, right? So I too have a set of rules, just like you have. I have to know, okay, this much light. Does the shape look good from a distance? When I walk into the room, what does it look like from 10 feet away? View distance. Is there a payoff when you get up close? Because sometimes, you look at paintings in a show and they look great from like 20 feet away. You get right up on it and it's like, ooh, que pobre si, signore. It's not so good, Like, wow, it's terrible to see that, But then maybe that's their intent, right? Who knows, right?
But yeah, that's funny, man, that you brought that up. I'm not going to name names, but there's an artist. I'll tell you later, though. Okay. There's an artist that I used to be super inspired by years ago. I was just impressed with mostly with his painting, and I met him in person. Well, first I saw, like what you were talking about. I saw his painting at the Society of Illustrators. It's a huge painting. And from a distance, I'm like, oh, wow, that's a blah, blah, blah. So cool. So I went up to see it. And when I got close to it, I was like, wow. And I realized I actually paint better than this. And this is like kind of just poorly done. It's messy. Too much blacks. Like the use of black was like off-putting. And the edges, it was like, wow, this is just not as, it's just, you know what I mean? Like, it was just, there was like so much about it. I'm like, wow, I just wasn't very impressed. And then what was interesting about that is I actually met him And I was like excited to meet him, and then the guy was a total jerk too. So I
Oh
was like,
no.
yeah. So I was like, you're out. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think that's something that's a really good point that you brought up too. Like, something, sometimes it's hard to control certain aspects. Like you said, when you walk into a room, how does the painting look from a distance and everything? That and the shape, the silhouette of it, like what's that communicating? I try to think about that with illustration work as much as possible. It can be really hard though with, like a lot of like publications have like the editors have like a specific thing they want, and like, it could be so much cooler if you did this one thing.
Oh yeah.
But they're just like, no, we want him like looking straight ahead. And you're like, well, it'd be so much more interesting if I did this one thing, and it's going to be, whatever. It's going to cause more drama or whatever it is. But it's like, no, they want this thing. And so there's a lot of times in illustration where you lose that as well. But I think when you can get away with it, that strong silhouette in an image is so important. That first impact of that shape that you see. And it's interesting. Like, ever since Trump became president, I was the only thing at all that I was excited about was I thought, oh man, I'm going to get to draw this guy a lot, because I think he's so much fun to make fun of and to draw. He's just there's so much crazy stuff you can do with his features and his shape and his posture and everything. But it's interesting. Like it actually was the opposite. Like most publications are like, yeah, we don't want to see Trump on anything. So like I've hardly done any. Only since he's been president, I've done maybe for publication, maybe like definitely less than 10. I think
that's crazy.
Yeah, I've done.
Did you ask Fred how many he's done so far? I'd be good. I'm curious.
Well, you know what? The difference between that is that Fred has a week. He's doing a weekly with the week. So every other week he does a cover. And so I think they probably have done a lot more Trumps, but like a lot of publications that I work with have like not only that, but they have pulled back from caricature a lot. Like it's strange. I don't know what it is. It's just there hasn't been as much caricature. Like when Obama was president, I was drawing him so many. It was crazy how many times I did Obama. I mean, it's got to be hundreds. I mean, so many Obamas. I think people just don't want to see this guy. And so but I did a caricature of Trump for Time magazine.
Uh-huh.
And I was so excited to do a caricature, but I ended up actually just basically doing the back of his head, so you couldn't really see him anyways. Wow. But it was still fun to kind of draw him from that perspective. But what I was trying to say is, the times I get to draw Trump for publications, I try to think about like what you said with the shape and when you walk in the room, is that I've seen so many people draw him, and I've been drawing Trump since like 2007 or maybe before that. I've been drawing him for things, and so I'm kind of one of those. I'm not a big fan of finding out a formula or of how a person looks, and then just once you get it down, you just draw them the same way over and over and over and over again. I just can't do that. It's just not exciting. And so I try every single time to come up with a whole new way of drawing this guy. And that becomes the challenge every time, of what can you do to make it still feel like this person, also sell the story, what they need.
Oh yeah.
And if it's caricature, bring that humor as much as they'll let you, because that's another thing is restrictions, with caricature illustration stuff. But yeah, it's that silhouette though. It's that does that shape, as soon as you see it, does that communicate that person right away?
Oh yeah. And it's funny. I have one of the assignments I give out the students is that they have to do a Hanna-Barbera cartoon character, and they have to make sure they follow the silhouette, because every single one of the silhouettes of those characters, you know, growing up with that stuff, you could recognize it.
Yeah,
the silhouette's very recognizable. And every character. I mean, all the cavemen in the Flintstones are all different. Their silhouettes are all, whether it's Mr. Slate or whether it's Fred himself or Barney even, their shapes are all different.
Yeah.
And it's incredible, right? It's the model of the show. Even the Jetsons, same thing. Everything is different, right? You know. And once again, you have this little guy, Spacely, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you know, but his shape is totally different than George Jetson's shape. I mean,
yeah.
Completely, right down to the nose. Everything is, you know. So I had the kids do that, and they learned about silhouettes because a lot were doing anime stuff.
Yeah.
And anime's tricky because it's the design doesn't. A lot of the design isn't so much about the silhouette as much. You know, like if you could take characters from certain shows and the silhouette will be almost the same as a character from another show, depending on, you know, from that
oh, yeah.
animation company, right? From that same company. I'm not saying all of them are the same, but like each company is different, right? So let's say, I don't know, Captain Harlock, or I don't know, there's Star Blazers or something. All those characters kind of have the similar shapes. You know, but it's all by that animation company and by that designer. Everything kind of looks the same. But then you get into the Hanna-Barbera ones, and everything is completely different on each character.
Oh yeah.
Even Fred Flintstone's wife, Wilma, looks different than Barney's wife. Like the silhouette, the shape of the head is completely different. You know.
Well, see, that's the thing. I think that's just a generation thing too, because like I mean, for me, like anime. There's some cool things about it. I don't get into it too much. Or like that, was it Mango or Manga or whatever the hell it is?
He said Mango.
Mango. I don't know what Mongo. Yeah. I don't know what it is. Yeah. All I know is to me it all looks the same, and I get bored really easy with that kind of stuff. But you know, that goes into play with like things like, you know, like if you look at like a Pixar movie, you know, like Nemo or whatever, you could easily just make a bunch of fish and tell the same story and whatever, and the fish all have like fish just all look like fish. Yeah, there's different kinds of fish and they have different things, but not only did they caricature the species, right, but then they actually gave that particular character its own set of characteristics.
Oh yeah.
Like underbites or different things like that are just, you know, and to me that's just like a layering of information that makes it so much more impactful.
Who worked on that? Is that Peter DeSev or is that Carter Goodrich?
I know Carter Goodrich definitely. I think I have that book. Peter DeSev probably did as well. I mean, usually they're both together in those things.
I love those guys, by the way. They're right now. I mean, I remember looking at their work on the New Yorker. All the different these guys did. Yeah, great stuff. I had Peter come and talk to my class a couple of years ago, and that was great. You know,
Peter DeSev is amazing, man. His book is still one of my favorite books. Dude, it's one of those kind of books where I just want to look through this book right now with a nice glass of wine.
Oh yeah,
it's just such a beautiful book. Yeah.
Is there a Carter Goodrich book?
I don't think so.
It needs to be. So. You should. You know him, right? You should bother him.
Yeah.
Be like, hey man.
I haven't met him in person. We've actually talked a few times online, like mutual respect type thing. He wants to be on the podcast. I've asked him and Peter, but it's always like, you know, they're always busy, you know, so it's very difficult to set it up. But both those guys, it's funny you bring up both those guys because I love character design, and I've gotten to do it a few times. I'd love to do way more of it. But those two guys are probably my biggest influence as far as like, you know, the epitome of quality of where you want to be when you're trying to design characters. Like they're just, you know, I like how much they push the form and the shape.
Oh yeah.
And it's just, you know, it's one thing to caricature, and caricature is like definitely the foundation of character design. But it's one thing to take a rat and do a caricature of it, but then to take that and bring it to a place where it's so animated and so creative in the way that you've designed its form and its characteristics, but then it still feels like a rat, you know. But then there's like the opposite. Like yesterday, like it's funny. My kids get annoyed with me because I can't watch anything and not say stuff, and it's just hard. Like we were watching this some animated movie, and I was just like, I sighed a few times. I'm like, oh God. And they're like, what? I'm like, I'm sorry. It's just it's hard to watch this. Why? I'm like, okay, a polar bear is a unique animal. Even in the bear species, it's the most unique bear. No bear looks like a polar bear. It's got a very unique long nose. It's almost like flat from the top all the way down, very long, very small little eyes together. And it's the tallest bear. It's all these different aspects, this long neck, all these different things. And that looks like a fucking teddy bear that's just white. And that's supposed to be a polar bear? I can't handle it. Like, how could you not make it look like a polar bear? And like, they're like, Dad, it's just a movie. I'm like, I can't watch the movie. I can't focus on the movie because it's so bad. And like, that kind of stuff drives me crazy.
Well, I love when they could take something and make it look like a person, but it still has to be the animal.
Yeah.
Like there was a Warner Brothers cartoon years ago where they made these two cats, Abbott and Costello. Have you ever seen that? And they're trying to, and it was, and they even made fun of the Hayes Act in the middle of the short. Sounds because the Hayes Act, of course, that was, you can't have foul language, you can't have nudity, all these things. It was supposed to be code for film, all film, not just and including animation. And there's a moment in the story, like in the short, where these two cats, there's one of them is Bud Abbott, the other one is Lou Costello, and they're trying to catch this bird, and then all of a sudden, I forget which one says this, but he says, flip me the bird. He goes, well, I'd flip you the bird, but because of the Hayes Act. And then I thought, that's so funny. I didn't get that. I was like a 6-year-old kid watching this. I had no idea what the hell he was talking about. Now I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe he said that. And it's very funny. But to make a cat look like Lou Costello, right?
Yeah.
That's amazing to design that.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. That's amazing character design. Like I enjoyed, it's funny. I get caught off guard lately because I have a 2.5-year-old. And so I've been watching like a lot. She's finally into Pixar movies and stuff like that now, where she can sit through those. It went from like Elmo to now it's like, now she's like has like an emotional connection, where she's just like something's happening. She's like, oh no, her sad, and like she, like, oh, it's okay. She's like, her need her mama, like she's like talking about it and like, like, so it's okay. Don't worry. It's going to be okay. And so I've been watching a lot of those with her now, like just going through like, oh, I can't wait to watch Ratatouille with her. I want to see how she reacts to that movie, but, it's funny because I've been finding myself watching movies that I thought were that's going to be a lame movie. I don't even want to watch this, but I end up watching it because she's 2. She wants to watch it. So, but then I end up loving the movie. And like a good example is Pets 2. I don't know if you've heard of that or seen it. But it's a movie that came out recently and it's hilarious. It's so funny how well the storytelling was, the character development, and these little characters. Like, for example, there's a little rabbit and Kevin Hart plays the rabbit, and it's so friggin' funny. It's just hilarious. Like, there's so many parts of the movie where I was like dying laughing. And then the same thing is Frozen 2. I don't know if you've seen the Frozen movies at all, but the first one came out years ago when my daughters were like a lot younger, my older daughters, and it was like torture. Just I can't do this.
Is it the singing? Is it the singing what gets it? Because that's the that was
singing. It drove me nuts.
The kill thing for me. Growing up, I had so much. Even as a little kid, I could not watch those Disney movies because of all the singing. Yeah. Because I brought up looking at Warner Brothers cartoons and no singing unless what's Opera Doc. But even then, that's kind of right.
Yeah, but see. So I get that. Yeah. I mean, it was the singing, but also just like the story. I was like, whatever. So I wasn't excited to see this new one. But it's funny. Like, again, it's amazing how that Frozen movie has related to kids everywhere. Because, again, my daughter, before she was even 2, she was singing that song. Like she didn't even know the words, but she was going ego, ego. Like she's like, I'm like, it's somehow they get the kids with that. But the Frozen 2 version or the sequel to the Frozen thing is the reason it's so good to me is like just the story quality got way better, the writing, and it's so funny. It's such a funny movie. The snowman character, such an awesome design, and he's introduced later in the first movie, and he's funny, but it's kind of like an introduction. He has the whole Frozen 2 to be in the movie now, and it's just hilarious. It's a really funny movie. So it's just funny how you can go from one movie to another with the same kind of characters and just develop it that much more to I mean, I think they even changed some of the design a little bit, but I mean, do you miss the 2D animation? Oh yeah, I do.
I that's one thing I feel like was a mistake for Disney to have a digital arm of animation. If they had, and you buy Pixar and then you make your own digital arm and you kind of go, wait a minute, what makes the Pixar stuff special is that it has this look about it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's what makes it special. Now you have guys who work in the digital arm of the Disney animation, and those guys, a lot of those guys, the younger people, they were watching Pixar movies. So why it's going to start looking like that?
Yeah.
I like this idea that things could look really different. Then that comes down to the designers. Then that'll be okay. Then you got to design it differently.
Well, it's interesting. Yeah, right? like in a Kung Fu Panda, which was a DreamWorks, one of my favorite parts about those movies were they would do like almost like these fantasy sequences where it would be 2D animation all of a sudden.
Yes.
And it was awesome. It was like, oh, I'll watch a whole movie like that. Like totally. There was this is not really 2D. I think it's like a mix between, but did you see Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse?
I did see that, yeah.
Yeah, that was, I thought, a very interesting movie. Like,
I thought that was pretty good. I didn't like the way that they designed the Kingpin. I thought he was
how he's just so way over exaggerated.
It was too much, that works great in a comic book because it's a still image, right? Yeah. But when you have to take that and have it move, then it gets weird, right? It's it's like this very square Stay Puft Marshmallow Man is coming after Spider-Man, and I'm like, oh my god, Yeah. And he moved too quick for such a big fella.
It did capture the comic book feel, but like you're right, having it move doesn't make sense. It's funny because I tend to think that same way with there's caricature artists out there that are really good that will do these insane exaggerations that are really creative and like from like you see like an angle like this or something. But then if I look at it and I'm thinking, okay, when I'm doing, I try to think of the person in three dimensions. Like I'm exaggerating the features, but I want it to look like you could take that person and you could turn their head at any angle, and it'll work. And some of these drawings that that are so exaggerated, like one of the things that drives me crazy is when someone will have like a side view like this and someone's smiling and they'll have this cheek just going like that. But it's like, what's that cheek doing? Like when it goes sideways, it's not gonna look right, but whatever. That's its own rant. But
it's not meant to move though. That's the thing. It's not meant to. It would be like looking at I don't know. You remember the guy that used to do the Sunday arts and leisure section of the New York Times?
I'm not sure. I have to know which.
They were black and white always, and he would hide his I guess it was his niece.
Al Hirschfeld.
Al Hirschfeld, yeah. If those things moved dimensionally, we would freak out. Like that's not right. Like you don't ever want to see that moving dimensionally ever. That's just people screaming in the streets with their hands.
Aladdin. The animated movie Aladdin. The genie was like basically influenced off Al Hirschfeld's work. Like if you look at it, you can see.
Oh yeah, I can see that. Sure.
Very much like a 3D version of it. But I want to. to talk about we have some fan art that did some drawings. If you want to talk about that in a second.
Here we go.
But I wanted before we do that, I wanted to talk a little bit. Just like I didn't bring this up earlier, and I want to make sure I talk about it. Is your kind of topic of interest within your work, like for example, this book I have, The Curiosities. I'm curious about your, like, how you got into that. Where did that whole genre start for you? Where you start, because you've created this really cool world and universe that's just totally you. And it's interesting. I love how in the book how you write little stories about your characters. Like you've created this character and you write about who they are, where they come from. But like when you're coming up with these ideas for these characters, are you just like, are you the kind of person that will gather, like, for example, the cover it's like a unique chimpanzee looking character with 4 eyes. But are you gathering tons of references of different animals and different things and just kind of doodling around? Or like, how does that creative process start with some of these, like clothing and all that kind of stuff? Is it just spontaneous sometimes, or?
Sometimes spontaneous, but most of the time I do have an idea in mind. A lot of that work, and it still continues today, is based on my fascination with the immigrant experience. Mm. But because I want to make it more universal, I don't actually paint real people, that come from other countries to come here. So I just created all these imaginary characters that came from sometimes imaginary places even that I make up. Although most of the cities in my stories are real places you could visit,
Yeah.
And I have to do a lot of research before I even write the story sometimes, just to get the place right. And what was the industry that was going on in that part of Scotland in the 1700s or the 1800s, right? So I should know that, so that way it makes sense when I'm writing the story. Like that's what would happen, So the reason why I picked these characters is so, like I said, to make it universal, and that way. It's like sort of a veiled commentary on the immigrant experience. They all came from somewhere. They're strangers in a strange land, and they have to either assimilate or pick the occupation that most fits their peculiarities or their strengths, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the key, and that's like that with a lot of immigrants that come here.
Yeah.
You could think of any immigrant group, and when they first come here, what kind of jobs do they have? What kind of things do they do right away? Like what kind of work do they end up doing? If we go back to the days of the gold rush, right? It's the 1850s and the 1860s, and we're building a railroad. You're gonna get cheap labor, right? So that's the cheap labor. It's gonna be these Irish and Chinese folks that come over here. They're gonna be building the railroad, right? Now, of course, it's moved over to agriculture. Right, mostly a lot of immigrants are working in agriculture now. So it's just this wave of immigration, right, is different every 20 years or so. So you have a different group comes in, So and it repeats. So I write these stories and I create these characters, and these are the lives they lived because I'm fascinated by it.
Yeah, that's really cool.
My own roots come from that, right? My grandmother's grandfather came here because somebody told him that there was a mountain of gold in Northern California. So he said, "Well, all right, let's get on a steamship, come over here." It didn't work out, but that's the thing, right? You just don't know because someone's telling you one thing, and then you get here and it's something else.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Here we are now, right? So that's where that came from. And the reason why I chose that look was because I wanted it to look like those old 19th century photographs, right?
Yeah. I love it, man.
So that was the key. What documentation do we have left from that era? It's those photographs. Because paintings are expensive. Even back then, if you wanted to hire someone to do a portrait, man, that's, especially back then, it's a lot of money. But photographer, these guys traveled from town to town, right? The process was relatively simple in terms of what it involved. The sitter Because what? It's exposure time. So what you have to do is you have to dress them up. Whether maybe get them in their fine clothing. Maybe you have a wardrobe. The photographer has a wardrobe with him that he can give them certain clothes, because not everybody had money back then. You want to buy a suit. Suits were tailored. They couldn't just go to like a Macy's and get a suit. You know what I mean? It wasn't like that back in in the 1860s, 1870s. You had to go to a person that makes suits, or maybe somebody in your family would have the chops to make a suit. Which no easy feat back then. They didn't have sewing machines really. Right?
Yeah.
That's by hand. And that's crazy, huh?
That is
so
crazy.
These travelers, these traveling photographers go from town to town. And then of course, we're talking about these giant cameras. These are large format cameras. Most of those prints are contact prints. That is to say that the negative on a piece of glass is literally laid right on the paper and exposed in one shot. And so that's the same. So what you get in the print is the same size, right, as the negative.
Oh, okay.
You've done that kind of photography before, right? With 35.
No, I mean, I did some photography stuff, but like, dude, like in the 7th grade or something like that. It was a long time ago.
Remember, you had an enlarger.
Yeah.
You developed a
dark.
negative.
I remember that. Yeah.
Right. Now imagine that your negative is an 8x10, and it's on a piece of glass, and you just take that 8x10 and you put it right on the paper, and then you expose it to light, and they have it timed, right? Because they have a timer. Of course, back then, I don't know how sophisticated the timers. Essentially, they're using a watch.
Yeah.
Right. And then this many seconds, and materials are expensive, right? Because silver, right?
Yeah.
So silver nitrate. This is not cheap. That end of it, but what made it cheaper than a painting was you didn't have to sit there, right, and have someone actually draw you. Yeah. How long does that take? And then they're going to paint you, and they got to look at you. And then, of course, now artificial lighting is a trick back then. So there's a specific time of day that you come into the guy's place, the artist's place, to sit there. Who has that kind of time? Only rich people have that kind of time, or people that are a little more well-to-do than the average person, right?
Yeah.
So if your last name is Astor, maybe you could pose for a painting, right? So it's like that.
That's awesome. I mean, it's so cool. I love that. It's clear when you look at the work too that you've put in the research and the thought behind it as well. I love one of the things I love about the paintings as well is obviously the characters are really unique and fun to look at, but your painting approach. The one thing that I as an artist get excited about when I see it is your use of not just light, but I guess atmosphere would be the word. Like there's like a nice atmosphere around the characters, like where almost like the edge of like someone's hair might disappear into the background a little bit, and certain things like that. Like there's like a nice like you pull it off in such a way that's just beautiful to look at, and it's amazing to me again that it's acrylic, because it's a different look for acrylic than I guess the typical approach. I guess I have to see your technique because I'm still a little confused by it, but it makes a little bit of sense. But I definitely
when the smoke clears and we're allowed to interact again, like people can show up, whatever, or whether we all have tests and we have to wear a scarlet letter saying that we're infected or not infected. I guess it would be the scarlet letter I guess people would have on them, saying they're infected or whatever. You'll come over and we'll work something out, or I'll meet you over at Fred Harper's place.
Oh yeah, dude,
just do it over there.
No, we gotta for sure, man. Yeah, like I said, I think the last time we hung out was like 5-6 years or so ago.
Oh yeah,
it's a long time.
Oh yeah.
But anyways, I want to share with you fan art. There's one question from a fan as well, but I think that's the last image. So I'll ask you then. But let me know if you see this. And we'll get started.
Oh, that's great. I love it. Well, who did that?
This is by Julio Warrens.
That is great. That's hilarious. Wow, and he's got my eyepiece hanging around my neck. That's really good. Wow, cool. And the cigar, of course. That's great.
It's an interesting style. Very symmetrical.
Oh yeah. Oh, I love it. That's great.
It's cool. Very cool. It's cool to see people doing actual graphite drawings as well.
Well, look at that. Gave me one eye. That's even funnier.
This is by Jack Lemonier.
Jack Lemonier.
Yeah.
One eye.
How would you say his name if you were trying to say it in the most French accent possible?
I don't know.
Because I say his name. He shares artwork almost every week, and I just love his name so much. So every week I say it as French as I can. So I was just curious if you had a French.
No, I don't. I don't really. I don't speak French, so I don't. You know, I would probably be doing it wrong. And
I don't think there's a wrong way. I think
my daughter took French, and she always used to correct me, so I just stopped doing it. I stopped trying to say things in French.
Well, I usually introduce him by just saying his name, but this time I didn't because I wanted to see it because he's so used to me saying Jacques Lemonier. Every time.
I'd have to see how it's spelled.
But yeah, I love his. He does really awesome graphite work, and he's got an awesome name. So,
well, that's cool. You got to have the name, right? That's important.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a cool one. Look how badass.
God.
You look like a badass.
Is hilarious. That is so funny. I'm smoking the cigar. Well, all right. Wow.
This is by Ray Shipman, by the way.
Oh, Ray Shipman. Wow. Is he? Have I seen his work before?
I'm not sure. He has submitted work several times to this podcast, but
wow,
yeah.
that's great.
I'll send them to you. By the way,
yes, he has the gray hairs in my head too, which is that's from the more recent photograph because we get old, we get gray. So
yeah.
There you go. I don't know if you got any gray in your head yet, but I definitely.
Yeah.
It's happening.
Yep.
Yeah,
I got a lot of silvers.
Yeah, me and Fred Harper, man. Next time you see us, we're just gonna be all gray. Yeah.
I actually just was at Fred's just before all this crap went down in February. Yeah, I stayed for I think 2 nights or 1 night. Can't remember now. But we had a blast. We had a really good time. We saw some live comedy and.
Well, that's kind of cool. Well, I would love to do that with you guys, by the way, because as you know, I love stand-up comedy. I've been following stand-up since I was a little kid, as I said before. And
oh yeah, next time for sure, man. That would be awesome.
I love it. And me and Fred, we talk about it all the time because we have a mutual friend, Stephen Price, who actually he did stand-up for like a minute, and so he knows, and he's good. He's quick. He's very quick, Stephen.
Oh, that's awesome.
It takes a special mind those guys have to have an answer to everything right away.
That's part of the fun.
Which I kind of wonder. I think of, do you know Stephen Wright?
Yeah.
I always wonder what it must be like if he ever had hecklers, like how he would handle a heckler, the way his delivery is. You know what I mean?
Huh. Right,
because it's got that. There's definitely something to it. Is the way he delivers his stand-up. It's not like anyone else I've ever seen.
Yeah, I haven't been doing it long enough to really get any hecklers. I've had a couple, and I just usually just say, like, I had a girl. I made a really stupid joke, and it was like on purpose. I can't even remember what it was right off the hand. It was some stupid little thing I threw in between a couple jokes, and I just I said something like. My wife and I are about to have a baby real soon. I don't really care if it's a boy or a girl. Something I can't even remember what I said. I said something like, as long as it has a penis or something like that. But it was like some weird. I can't even remember it right now. It was like kind of like off the top of my head, kind of a thing that I just tagged in there, and it wasn't really. It was more just a silly, just playing around, if that makes sense. It wasn't actually even a part of what I was talking about. And she heckled me. This girl heckled me. She's like, ha, ha, ha,
Oh, boy.
And I just looked at her and I just winked at her and blew her a kiss. Just like, that was for you. It was like a dad joke or whatever.
Okay.
It was one of those things where I had a response, like someone said something about the last thing I said, and then I said something like, "Yeah, I don't really care if I have a boy or a girl as long as they're healthy, and have a penis." It was something like that. It wasn't, it's not the best joke, but whatever. I was
Oh my
on the
God.
spot.
I'm pointing. And I have my ponytail going all the way to the back. And he's holding it with.
Oh, that's funny. I almost thought it was as a cane at first.
Yeah, that's the jangliest cane, if that was ever a cane. That's. It's funny. I look like a stand-up comic with this one.
Yeah, that's funny.
That's really
this is by Waleed Shahab, by the way.
Okay. Wow. It's cool though. I look like Aaron Martin in this. Do you know Angry Wobots? He's a really good artist. He's like a street artist, but he does all kinds of stuff. But me and him are we're both Asian. But we both have similar features. Let's just say. So it's very funny to see this because it looks like him, almost more than it looks like me, which makes it kind of funny.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. Man, I got my receding hairline is like bam right there. It's like, look out, brother, you're gonna be bald soon.
That's funny.
Hey, shiny.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Oh my God.
This one's by Patrick Limegruber. Patrick Limegruber.
That's a hell of a name. That's great. That's pretty funny too. Wow, look at my fat face, man. That's amazing. That's like I'm ready for Buddhagram right there.
You know what? This almost looks like you could be like on like a brand logo for a bottle of syrup,
Bottle of syrup, a bottle of sumo wrestling juice. You take this juice, boy, and you just like you could just push him out of the circle. Push him out of the circle. In fact, it'll just say on the bottle, circle pusher. Circle pusher. Right on the bottle. That's great.
You almost look pretty though in this. Like you could put some eyelashes on, some thicker eyelashes, and be like, it's like, yeah, I don't know. There's something very like you look like a mama.
Wow. Do you want me to be your mama? Is that it, Jason? Is that what's going on here? It's like a secret.
Hey, I didn't
put me aside. Please be my mama, Travis. Please be my mama. I'm like, all right. Yeah. All right.
I didn't draw it. Hey, it's not.
It's all right. It's cool, man. I love it. I like all of them. This is great. This is really funny.
Yeah, it's interesting too. I think it's cool to add that little butterfly in there. The little color aspect. I think it would be cool. Like one nice touch. This is just whatever's.
Well, that's from a painting. That's from one of my paintings. There's actually I did a painting where one of my characters is it's all black and white except for the butterfly, and that's
okay, cool.
Butterfly. So I'm sure they saw it and they were like, okay, let's put that blue butterfly.
Okay, that's cool. I was gonna say one cool thing would take some of that turquoisey blue and put a little touch of that on that close cheek. Just like a little reflective light there would be
Oh yeah, that'd be great. That'd be killer, man. I love that little reflective light. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. I love that.
This is a drawing by Christoph Misat. Wow. I think it's actually a traditional drawing on tile flooring.
I like that my face is segmented.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
It's like broken down. It's like cheekbone underneath. It's straining to hold something back.
Yeah, it's in sections. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's an interesting way to put it.
Yeah,
my face is in sections.
I am holding back something important. You'll see when I cut the string. Boom.
Speaking of.
Wow. That
wires a balloon.
That is amazing. I love that one. That's very clever.
This is by Dominic Zeilinger, by the way.
Wow. And I wonder if there was an imaginary friend painting that I was working on, and it has ears just like that. I'm wondering if he saw it online.
Yeah, that's the one thing I think it's fun. Like I always provide photos of my guests, but every once in a while people they'll do like some more stocky type research, and they'll find some random like wedding photo or something to draw from, and people are like, oh, that was from my wedding.
That's amazing. Really.
Yeah.
And I still look like a sumo wrestler here, but it's not a bad look. You know, like I look like I could wear sandals and pull it off in this picture. You know, the wood sandals that click clack, click clack, click clack.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
That's funny.
Wow.
So drawing by Amir Makash.
And this is from the there's an old promo picture that they used for the they used to have artists collectible cards. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not sure.
They're designed to look like baseball cards, and that was the image on mine. And
okay.
if you flipped it over, the back had all the stats. You know, bats right, throws left. You know,
that's funny.
Yeah, batting average based on sales, stuff like that. It was pretty cool.
Now, is this actually a Post-it? I think it is a Post-it.
Oh yeah, that is a Post-it. You know, it's funny. I was in a show. I wonder if you saw the show where we all had to draw on Post-its. That was like the whole show.
Oh, that's cool.
I ended up drawing all the actors from 12 Angry Men. So it was like 12 Angry Post-its.
Oh, that's funny.
So it was like Henry Fonda, Lee J. Cobb, you know. I'll have to show it to you sometime. Well, I don't have them. They sold them all. It was a lot of fun to do it. You know, gotta make it interesting.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
This is by Dave Watson.
Wow, that's a more serious, somber drawing of me. This is like the drawing that would be at like my funeral or something. You know, it's like like you walk to the funeral home and something had happened and they didn't have any photographs because of the, you know, whatever happened. So all he had was this drawing left, and there it is. And they're like, oh, this is Travis Louie. This is him. This is how we remember him. Contemplating something. Yeah.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
I like the textures in this.
Yeah, it's really nice.
It's like a very soft paper.
Yep, and it's looks like got a little kneaded eraser to pull out the highlights. You know,
Yeah.
Maybe there's a little I don't know. Maybe there's some charcoal in there. Who knows? Unless this is done digitally.
No, I think it looks traditional to me.
I don't know. You could do that.
Yeah, you could do that. That's my daughter.
Oh. As he pulls in close.
I think it's traditional.
I think that's traditional too. Now that you pulled up right up on it.
Yeah. This is the last one. This is by Juan Gastelum.
Oh, that's funny. I got a little mustache. That's great. I always wanted to have a mustache, but I just can't. I mean, if I do grow a mustache, it does exactly that. And it's really funny. So that's why I don't do it.
What do they call that? Is it like the fouchoir or something like that? Like the fouchouin or some kind of mustache? It's like a name for it when it's like the middle is gone, but then just like the ends go out and curl.
I don't know what they call it. All I know is I always wanted to have the twirl on the end because I want to be able to tie somebody to the train tracks. You know what I'm saying? I need that kind of, I need a bad guy mustache. That big black mustache, which is now salt and pepper now, but it was like big black mustache with the little curl at the end, little wax, you know?
Yeah, I was doing that for a while. And I might grow it back again, but then we're about to have another baby again. And I cut it off before the 2-year-old was born because I knew it was going to be too itchy, for a little baby.
Oh yeah.
Because I can't stop kissing my kids on the cheek all the time. And even though I shaved it, she still had like red cheeks all the time. And so I told my wife this time I'm going to shave it smooth. It'll be like all the way gone, but we'll see what happens. But this guy, Juan, has a question for you. He says, can you please elaborate a bit on what kind of prints do you suggest for selling online? What is the standard? What can be done? And what is definitely not recommended?
Prints online? Well, I mean, you could do lithography. You could do so many different kinds of prints you could do to sell online. The trick is whether or not you have access to those kinds of places, or access to a printer or a person who can print for you, Like if you had I don't know, G clay prints, G clays or iris prints. They're done with a high quality printer. You know, like what Fred Harper has, and what you probably could do that, or if you, I don't know if you already do that.
Uh, there's like a printing company here in Chicago that I like to use. There's also some online ones that I've played with.
Do you use Blackbox?
No, I've never used that.
Or are they? I don't know if they still exist. And they're in Chicago. That's why I say this.
Oh no, I think I can't remember the name. The one here is Chicago something. Chicago. I can't remember what it's called actually, but I'll have to look that up. I haven't had any prints made for a little bit, so.
And do you like the White Sox or the Cubs? I have to ask you.
You know, to be honest, I'm not a huge sports person. I'm more of a football and hockey person, though. As I'm originally from North Wisconsin, so the Packers is like.
The Packers, okay.
Yeah, that's like my family is like hardcore, and so I love watching the Packers, but I also love the Bears because I've been here for over 25 years, so I feel like I'm a Chicagoan. I've been here most of my life. But as far as the Cubs go, I have to say Cubs over the White Sox because I've been in the north side basically the entire time. And plus my entire family that I married into are hardcore Cubs fans. And so I tend to root for the Cubs. Plus it's just, there's something about the Cubs to me that just feels more Chicago. But that's because I'm not a South Sider. You know, I've never lived on the South Side, and to me, Chicago Cubs just feels more Chicago to me. Feels more class. The other thing I like with the Cubs is this: the stadium is
Wrigley
the classic stadium. It's more intimate, and Cubs fans remind me of Green Bay Packer fans. It's more like family, and it doesn't matter if they're losing game after game. You're still having a blast, hanging out with each other. Whereas I think when the White Sox lose, everyone gets pissed off and angry and you know what I mean? Like there's just a different vibe. But I don't know. I'm not as big. I have a Cubs hat. Let's put it that way. I wear a Cubs hat every once in a while. But I don't wear a White Sox hat. So
I love baseball. So
yeah. I like to play. I like to play catch and stuff.
I follow all these different teams all over the country and some even in Japan. Because I really like baseball that much. So I try to get as many of the different hats. I try to go to as many different stadiums as I can. I have not gone to Wrigley Field yet, but when I do, I will let you know.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Want to go to a game? That would be awesome.
That would be so cool. This last weekend, we've been so locked up with everything, so I went and bought baseball gloves and some baseballs, and I'm like my oldest daughters are 13 and 16. They're like, "What's that for?" I'm like, "We're playing catch. We're gonna go outside and play catch." Like, because I've never played baseball with them before, and they're like, "What?" And they had a blast. Like before you know it, they're throwing it back and forth, and they got it, you know. And at first it was funny; they could not catch, they could not throw, but I was like, "Let's do something fun like that we've never done." And I miss playing baseball. Like I used to play all growing up. I played baseball.
Cool.
And like, you know, my brother and I and our friends, we just play all the time. It was like the Sandlot. It was like that style.
Okay.
But I haven't done it for so many years, and I was at Target, and I'm like, I saw the baseball gloves, and I'm like, I'm getting baseball gloves. It's gonna be fun, and the girls loved it, man.
If only at a cornfield that you could, you know.
Oh yeah, I mean, we've got like an alley behind my house here, in this. I'm in the city, and then there's a Catholic church across the street over here that's got a huge like empty lot, so we can go there and play catch. And then there's a park a few blocks away that like an open field that we could go. But it was funny because the girls were like, "Can we do this more?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's why I got them. That's why I got the gloves, so we can do this more."
That's great.
So it's fun. But I think there was one more part to this question real quick. Well, this actually was for me. He says, "Are you sleeping better now?" Because ever since this whole thing has been starting, I just haven't been sleeping. I think it's just like anxiety. But you know, the truth is because my wife's about to have a baby, and so I've been. I think I've been had a lot of anxiety. I think about everything that's going on, plus the fact trying to prepare for having another. This is daughter number 4, so. So yeah, a little bit of anxiety here in the Seiler household. But I'm excited. I can't wait. But at the same time, I'm just like, you know, I want things to be good and safe. And there's been some complications not serious, but there's been some stuff with the pregnancy that, it's always nerve-wracking.
Oh yeah.
Actually what I'm trying to do is I was like drinking way too much wine, and now I'm trying to like cut back, and I'm trying to just take like a huge break from drinking and then exercise every single day. And I've been finding sleeping actually a little bit better in the last few days. So
do you nap at all?
Sometimes I do. Like I'll take like a 20-minute power nap sometimes. Like, like during the day, like if I'm working on a deadline or something, I'm like, oh, my eyes are just tired. I might like shut my eyes for like 20 minutes.
That's the only way I can work all night is if I nap in the middle of the day. If I don't nap in the middle of the day, I can't work all night.
Yeah.
It helps with all that.
That's the thing. I don't work at night usually.
You find like when you're starting to drop the brush, as they say, it's like that's the telltale sign you really need to sleep. Like you're in the middle of doing something, and you're like, oh, I got to go to sleep.
Yeah, there's times where I feel like my eyes just are. I'm just feeling like, oh, this feels good. Just to close them, this feels good, And so that's when I'm like, okay. But like, there's times too where I don't know if this happens to you, where I'm painting and all of a sudden, I'm like, what is this color? Like I don't even recognize the colors anymore. Like it's time to take a break.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like I'm like looking at something like I can't even see what color this is or value. I'm just like, I need to take a little break, But and then you come back and you look at it and you're like, oh, that looks great. What was I thinking? Like that happens sometimes too.
Well, it's weird because we're mixing mud. Yeah. What I mean, so especially when you're working with your with those oil paintings.
Yeah.
On your palette, what it does not fit the real world, but it fits the painting that you're doing. Like it might look like dog shit on the palette, but you hold it up to the painting and it's the right color.
Yeah.
That.
Yep.
So
yeah,
I can see where you can just go off and you're like, oh, is that right? I don't know. Is that I don't know.
It happens a lot more with oil painting for me, like where, especially like even with that one, like where I'm mixing the flesh tones. And I'm like looking, I'm like, okay, the shadows, there's like almost like a yellow ochre, with, a little bit of black in there with just a little bit of red, and just like all these, like I can see all the different variations, and you're trying to get that, and then you go to the next area where you're trying to block in, and it's all the exact same colors. It's just a different level of value and saturation added to that, but it's pretty much, you're still using the same, because I like to work in very limited palettes.
Right.
And I mostly work with a Zorn palette. And so essentially I'm using the same colors to create every single part of the painting. Yeah. So it's just tons of piles of the same color, just different. It's like cooking. How much am I putting into this, versus this, but when you're tired, it can all just be like, oh, it's all the same.
Especially if the values are close.
Yeah,
and if the chroma is close too, which is tricky. So the intensity of the color. I mean, when I say that,
yep.
If it's close, and we're talking like maybe a half step, then there's confusion, right? So there is something to those painters that have more of a jump, right? And let the mix happen from a distance, right?
Oh yeah.
Up close. Like your paintings have a payoff up close too, not just from a distance because you're of the rendering, right?
Yeah.
But there are some painters where, it all mixes from a distance. It's a visual mix, right? The colors mix all from a distance. You get up close, and it doesn't look like that. So the payoff is different, right?
I see that a lot with like plein air paintings, where there's some plein air paintings that are like even some that my dad have done and different artists where you look at them up close and you're like, that's some sloppy looking shit. And
yeah,
but the brushwork is still beautiful though, you know. But then you step back and you're like, damn, that's so amazing.
It's all there.
The most recent thing that kind of I felt I learned so much from seeing this artist's work in person was there was a Sargent show in Chicago like a year and a half ago or something like that.
Sergeant.
Yeah, and it was a whole show that was just stuff I've never seen before, like even drawings but there was this one painting where it was a huge painting, and it was the first one I think when I walked in I saw, and it was just awesome. It was of this man, and he's in this jacket, and his hand is kind of coming down, and I start walking up to it, and I got up close, and I just got really annoyed. I was blown away, but I was annoyed that the arm looked like it was almost all black, with just a few marks of the folds, suggesting the folds, like literally just a like couple brush, and then a couple highlights just suggesting here and there. And then the hand looked like it was 3 or 4 brush strokes. It was crazy. The hand was unreal up close. I'm like, that's ridiculous. How did he do that? And then you step back, and it looks like a real hand. And what was weird though is the hand, when you got up close, still looked amazing, but it was crazy how loose and brushy it was. And it was just, I was like blown away. I'm like, man, that is just incredible how he was able to say so much with so little, and it still feels, it's just, everything's right about it. But what got me mad was the arm, the coat, because like up close, I'm like, that looks sloppy as shit. Like it's just a couple bloop, bloop, bloop. It doesn't, that's not Sergeant. What's going on there? Then I step back like a couple feet, and it's so realistic. And I'm like, ugh. I kept walking back and forth like, how did he do that? It was crazy. Like I stared at that painting for the longest time. And there's so many. I mean, it was funny because I went there with my wife, who's also an artist, and we had my 2-year-old, but at the time I think she was just a little over a year. And my wife like rushed through the show because she was just like, my baby was talking to all the paintings. Oh. So like every painting she sees, she's just like, I thought, like, and people were, my wife was, I think, feeling self-conscious that everybody is looking at us. Mm-hmm. So she's like, you look, and I'm going to rush through. So, of course I feel like I have to kind of rush through as well. But like, I see one of those paintings and you just get stuck on it. And it's just like, that guy, man, something, man. It's just amazing to me. It's amazing, that kind of work. I see that similar. You know Jeremy Lipking, his work?
I know Jeremy.
Oh.
I know him. He's a good guy. I try to see him every time I go out to LA.
Oh.
He could paint like that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is like, I love his paintings so much, and that's the same thing as I've only seen, I think, one of his originals. I don't remember where it was. It might have been somewhere in New York, and it was that kind of a feeling where like, damn, oh, it's awesome, man. Oh, are you frozen?
And like an Andrew Zorn, you know, Andrew Zorn, he's at the palette. Yeah, is that Sargent was better at the gesture of something, so he could communicate the language of a shape better. Yeah. There's something about it's the most perfect shape, right? And so he has both this wonderful ideal shape and this probably the best I've ever seen economy of chroma, right? And economy of value, all in one stroke.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. That's exactly. Yep.
Oh yeah, it's quite a marvel. You see touches of that in other painters, but this guy was just doing it all the time, right?
Dude, like in his silk dresses and stuff.
Oh yeah.
It's weird because it's like, man, that looks like a silk dress. It's so amazing, and when you walk up, it's like just gooped paint. Like what the?
There was a French painter. His name was Bastien Lepage. But Lepage, okay. You know Lepage? And there's a big painting at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and it's Joan of Arc. Oh, okay. Unfortunately, he died very young. He was 39 or 38 years old when he died, so we never got to see what he could have done. Mm. But he was starting to have those touches that Sargent has. If you look at that painting, you can see it. Those little things where he'll have a figure, and from a distance the face looks a certain way. Then you get right up on it, and it's just like five marks or something, you know. And but he was almost there, but then he died, and you never got to see, you know. And that was around the same time. We're talking it's at the end of the 19th century, so it's the 1880s, I guess, with his timeline. But you never got to see it because he died, and that kind of sucks. You know?
Do you know the art of Nicholas Uribe?
Yes.
Yeah, he's another one of those artists who I just love his brushwork so much. Like he says so much with less brushwork, but it's like all the information you need, and it's just clean, solid brushwork.
Oh yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, he's an amazing painter. But anyways, man, we've been talking for 2 hours, and it's awesome. I could talk to you all day long.
Oh yeah.
But before we end this bad boy, is there anything that you want to do to direct people to places where they can find you? And obviously, there's things, you know, things aren't normal right now. But do you have anything planned in the near future for showings or anything where people can buy your books, or let them know the?
Well, they can go to my website if they want to buy a print. And I'm offering thumbnail drawings there as well. If anyone's curious, they could buy a thumbnail. So it's a good price. But I have a show coming up in June at the William Basic Fine Arts Gallery, Massachusetts. I don't know how it's going to happen. It might all just be online. But if you follow me on social media, on all social media, I will be advertising that show, and that's going to be in June. The other thing after that will be I have a big show in Los Angeles in November.
Oh, cool!
And hopefully by then the smoke will clear and I can actually fly out there, and it'll be great. And that's my big show of the year. Is always on the West Coast. So if you want, you know, so there's those are the two things that I have in my head right now. And I'm also working on my second book after all these years. I finally have another book that I'm going to be doing.
Oh, that's awesome! So,
cool, man. It'll be the companion to that book you have there.
Everyone will be wearing masks, though.
I hope not. No, it still deals with the turn of the century, but it's all about people and their pets and their imaginary friends. That's
cool. Oh, that's going to be awesome.
So
a lot of things to work with there.
Oh yeah.
That's
well, basically the last 3 shows is going to be in that book.
Oh, cool. That's awesome, man.
So cool, man.
Sweet.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming, man. This has been great. It's been good to catch up, and I'll definitely take you up on next time I'm in New York. I'll make sure. I mean, the last time I was there was like spontaneous, so I think I was there for only a day actually, if I think about it. But next time for sure, that'd be awesome. Definitely hit some comedy. That'd be really cool.
Totally.
So awesome. Thanks so much for everyone for listening, and thank you for the artists for submitting work. And we'll catch you all next time.
Cool, man. Thanks.
You want answers? And the truth shall set you free. I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.